Welcome back to the I Empower podcast, season 2, where we hear inspirational stories and then we turn that into art that reminds us to be great. Each week, we dive deep into the story of a special person who discovered their power against all odds. But it doesn't stop there. All of the inspiration is then memorialized into a single unique painting that reminds us to be great. So if you, my friend, are looking to step out of your own way and into your life's full and well-deserved potential, this is the place for you.
It's utilizing those statements that have potential in them to where your brain doesn't say, that's not true. No, you can't do that. Because your brain is going to say, oh, yeah, you are growing every day, so you can gain more financial abundance. That's a statement.
I'm really excited to have you on today, Patsy. I feel like instantly, like when we you responded to my message on Instagram, I felt like we instantly just had this like connection. It was so natural. And you shared a little bit of your story with me. What first initially caught my attention was your beautiful feed. And then I seen that you were a spiritual lifestylist. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay. And I was like, what? Let me look. And then I was looking at some of your posts that you made about some situations that you had been in the past. And I was like, okay, I'm going to slide into the DMs and see if she'll answer. And then the story that you told me was just, it's an empowering one. I think it's an important one that people should hear. And I personally connected with you on a number of things that we talked about. And so, yeah, I'm just pumped to introduce you to everybody. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you for reaching out and for giving me this opportunity to tell my story, because any chance that I get, I love to do so, because it's so empowering to own your own story. So to introduce myself, my name is Patsy Berridge. I am married to, hands down, in my opinion, the most amazing man, especially for the way that we started out and the way that we connected and just everything that we've been through for the last 8 years. We do not have children, and I am one of the rare people that has no desire to have children. I absolutely love them, and I have many of little gremlins running around in my life, and I adore them.
Yeah.
But I have 4 dogs, and right now, with the place that my husband and I are in, we're very much in a very selfish place, in the aspect that we were so focused on our internal growth and our internal happiness and peace, and then manifesting that into our external and just creating this beautiful life together. And so, yeah, we're in this place of just kind of like going with the flow of it all and dealing with the hiccups when they come. And we don't want anything to come in and mess up that flow. But of course,
I understand.
I
understand.
Things change or something happens, we'll definitely accept any blessings, with open arms.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I love that. I think it's so important that especially women just highlight that there is no wrong way to like live your life. And I feel like everyone always, especially if you're with someone for a long time, the questions, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to do that? And, just I think that question should just go away. And then B, I think it's beautiful. You're creating the life that you want to live. And that, most importantly, like you said, like, focusing on inner growth and living your most fullest life. I think that's awesome.
And that's an area that in this healing journey that I've been on, that I'm still working through, because there's this societal pressure to, go to college, get married, get the job, have the kids, create the family, get your 401k, all these different things. And those are beautiful ways to go about it, right? Absolutely. If that's your desire, then go for it. Right. But there is this pressure, I think, that some women feel to get married or have children when that's not necessarily their truest desire. And there's a little bit of a struggle that I have encountered with still feeling very much in my divine feminine, right? Because that divine feminine is she can be very mothering and nurturing, and she creates life. She creates all different kinds of things. And that's an aspect of me that hasn't produced a creation, right? And so there's still been a little bit of healing that I'm doing around that, but it's a beautiful journey.
Ah, yeah, it sounds incredible to me. So, I'm really pumped to just get into your story and hear everything that you have to say. And I know, like, where you are now with what you've dealt with, I think is just such a beautiful place, and it definitely is going to bring hope to anyone that may have experienced similar situations, and then understanding from those that have not been in something like that, because I think that that's what we really are trying to create with the podcast is hope and
Mm-hmm.
understanding, empathy, because everyone has a story, and ultimately we just want to find a place where we feel like we belong. I know that when I went through my trauma, and we talked about that before we got on the air, about just feeling like we're not alone and feeling connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that having that community is super important. So, yeah.
Yeah, so to start it off, I am a huge believer in connection. I feel like every human on this planet has an innate desire for connection. And it's up to us to allow that connection to manifest in relationships and everywhere else. But of course, we have trauma and experiences along the way that sometimes block that or make us believe otherwise, that we're even capable of having it. So to do a quick little rundown of my story, I grew up in beauty pageants, dance competitions, piano competitions, you name it. Most of my childhood memories are practicing or competing. I don't really have many memories from being a child, from playing
Yeah.
or doing things like that. I have vague memories of holidays and whatnot, but most of my childhood was filled with competing. And mind you, I loved it at the time. I thought it was just so fun because my mom and I were constantly traveling, going to different states, staying in hotels and meeting new people. Like, it was such a fun experience. Now I'm able to look back and realize on how much of a different childhood I kind of missed out on, but I don't regret it because I still had a beautiful experience. But all of those years of competing instilled this sense of self-worth that only others could meet for me, could produce for me. There was no sense of true self-worth within myself because everything was, your value was based on what place you got. First place, second place, talent winner, beauty winner, whatever the case was, that's kind of how you were determined, right? So of course, when you don't win first place, you're just, I wasn't good enough. So how can I be
Yeah.
like her who won first place? What did she do that I could mimic or I could copy the next time? So you think about all of that in these very young, informative, impressionable years for a child. And it led to a long road of constantly seeking for external validation in anything and everything that I did. So, on top of competing with all of that, at the age of 7, my parents split up, and I had a little bit of an unstable living environment with them. We moved around a handful of times, and then they ended up splitting up, and I ended up being pulled from the area that I had grown up in and moved to a whole nother city, to a whole nother town. I moved from a little bitty country town to the middle of Houston.
Oh my gosh.
And let me tell you, it was a beautiful, beautiful awakening for me because I was finally being shown a part of the world that I'd never seen before. My everything was being opened up, but it was also a big transition. It was a big
Yeah.
challenge. I went from, every single kid in the school knowing each other to not knowing a soul for miles.
Yeah.
And so we all know, even in growing up in the same, school district with all of your friends, you still go through bullying and childhood, fights and all of these different things. So it's still a bumpy road. And then you add in the moving and the constant instability in the home life, and it just makes for a very unstable environment. And so at a very early age, I started smoking weed. I was able to drink for the first time I think I got drunk on New Year's Eve at 11 years old.
Oh my gosh.
I was in the safety of my own home, and nothing crazy happened, but I was introduced to it at that age. And I was in an environment where everybody around me drank to party. It was how everybody communed and got together. And so I was just introduced to drugs and alcohol at a very, very early age. And before I knew it, I had become a chameleon. I was becoming whoever I needed to be in order to survive in the environment that I was in. And there's a beautiful aspect of that because, yes, I love that I'm so multidimensional that I can hang out with any group of people and find a common ground. I love that aspect about me. But at the same time, the unhealed version of that is you're constantly changing the true aspects of you to please the others around you. And between that emotional trauma and then traumas that happen, of course, in your teen years when you have sexual trauma and trauma with alcohol involved and sex and all of these different things that happen, I became a very unstable, emotional drunk. And I didn't realize how emotionally unstable I was. And that was really hard. And, all throughout my teen years, I just drank and I partied and I did drugs and I worked at strip clubs and I partied even more. And I searched for love in any man that would give me the time of day. Yeah. And, it took me a long time to come to peace with that and not be angry or feel shame or guilt over the life that I experienced, because that's really what it was. And then we fast forward to 2014 and I met my husband. I was his bartender. So I met my husband and we went out on a date on March 11th of 2014 and had a great time. It was fun. I was still drinking at the time. But 2 days later, I got the news that my brother had passed away from suicide. And it was in that moment that my whole world stopped. I didn't know. I mean, I had lost a sibling before, but to lose a sibling to suicide, to be hit so close to home by that, there's no way to prepare you. There's no preparation for it. There's no understanding of the grieving process that you're going to go through. And it was a really hard grieving process for me. The moment I found out, I pretty much dove to the bottom of a Jameson bottle and tried to drown myself for the next 4 years because it was terrible. And God bless my sweet husband. He stayed with me throughout this entire process. And he looked at me and, the moment I told him what happened, he said, "Go get your dog. You're not staying at home by yourself." Because he knew that just anybody, it doesn't matter, you're man or woman, you just lost somebody. You need some sort of nurturing, even if it's just sitting next to a person, right? It's just so nice to not be alone. And in those moments, I just knew this man is special because he is choosing to sit in the discomfort of the grief that he doesn't have to sit in. He had the choice to walk away and he chose to stay. And that I just was like, okay, you're a keeper. I can't deal with this just yet because I'm grieving too much.
Yeah.
But we'll address this later.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful.
And so, for the next 4 years, I proceeded to black out as much as I could. Like I said, God bless my husband for the emotional roller coaster that he was on for those 4 years with me, because he remembers the things that I was blacked out for. And I used to have this running joke, "Oh, if I don't remember, it didn't happen." And then it's funny, but it's not very nice. It's not very kind to the people who do remember around you. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward to 2018, and my best friend decides to pack up all of her stuff and my godchildren and move to Florida because her husband got a job offer. So
yeah,
big exciting news for them. But I was very, very emotionally codependent on her. And we didn't realize how dependent we were on each other. And so we had a massive grieving process of like a friendship breakup in a sense, in the physical realm at least. And so it was Father's Day weekend, and we drank all weekend. I went home. I drank with my dad on that Sunday, proceeded to be on like a 3-day binger for that entire weekend. And I went to work Monday morning, and I was still drunk when I showed up to work. I ended up getting sent home because I was just so sick. I couldn't even stay behind the bar to bartend. And turns
Yeah.
out I gave myself alcohol poisoning. But it was in that day after getting sent home and being just so miserable. I mean, just the pounding headache, the shame and the regret and the guilt and everything that I was feeling inside of me. I remember just laying on the bathroom floor, just begging God, like, if you just please take this migraine away from me, like, I will never drink again. And I don't know how many times I've said that.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times anybody has said that statement, right?
Right.
Famous last words. But it was in this moment, I joke around, and I love the show NCIS. And in the show, the main character Gibbs has this thing where he head slaps people on the back of the head, and it's kind of like, hey, come on, get it together. And I felt like it was in that moment, like God, higher source, whoever it is, whatever you call it, like came up and just gave me a good smack on the back of the head and was like, what are you doing, Patsy? What are you doing with your life? And all these questions started flooding in of, Patsy, you're 29 years old. You're a couple of months away from being 30. Like, what do you have to show for yourself? You've been with this man for the last 4 years, but he hasn't proposed to you. There's got to be a reason why. I started going through like all these different questions. And of course, they made me feel worse. You know, they were
Yeah.
all telling me that I was just a terrible person. But it was just in those moments where I was like, I was battling the desire to not live anymore while still having a small desire to live. And it was such a terrible war that was like going on inside. And I just didn't want to feel that anymore. I was just tired of the war. And I was like, I just want to be done. But for some reason, my husband ended up having to stay at work even longer that day. And so I ended up being at home all day by myself in my own misery, which looking back was a blessing. And by the time he got home that night, he walked in the door and I stood up and I was like, I'm done. I have to be done. Like, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep drinking the way that I'm drinking, because before I know it, I'm going to end up in jail. I'm going to end up in the hospital. I'm going to hurt somebody, and I'm not going to remember, but their family is going to remember. You're going to remember, like, all of these different things. And I was just like, I'm done. I can't do it. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I'm done. And that was the day I decided to get sober. June 18th, 2018. And
it's incredible.
excuse me, I've had a few slip ups. I've had two different instances where I had one time I had a sip just to have a sip, and then another time I had an actual full entire drink. And both times were a conscious choice to make, and both times I realized I remember why I don't drink anymore. Instantly, my body felt it. I could feel, just the discomfort within my body. And the one night that I had the actual full drink, I noticed it with my mental. It was like these low frequency limiting beliefs, negative little nagging voices started popping in my head. Well, your husband didn't really answer that question the way that you liked it. You should go tell him how you feel about that. What? No, I'm not trying to pick a fight. No.
Right.
And so it was, yes, I look back and I'm like, I really wish I wouldn't have done that. But at the same time, I'm able to look back and use those as teaching moments and realize now I'm saying no to alcohol out of like the true conscious choice that it just doesn't serve me. It doesn't feel good in my body. And I just don't want it. Not because it's destroying my life like it was a few years ago. And
Right.
so, it's been a beautiful experience. It's been a wild and emotional journey.
Yeah.
But it's definitely been worth it.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's an incredible story. As you're telling this, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I see myself in a lot of the things that you mentioned. And I'm going to circle back to a few things, but I do want to ask you, so in your sobriety, I know that there's a lot of, I think it's good. Like, I had a guest who was on season 1. Her IG handle is She Stays Sober, and her name is Sarah. And we talked about how sobriety looks different for everyone. The journey of sobriety is different for everyone. I know sometimes in that community, we still find ourselves being judged. And so I know sometimes people say, well, you're not sober if you have to have medication to keep, if you're medicated. And, a lot of the programs that are out there, if you slip up, air quote slip up, you start back at stage 1. And so, we had discussed, it's kind of like for me, like when I quit smoking cigarettes, I can socially smoke. Sometimes I'll have one. Again, there's alcohol involved. So, and then when I have one, it reminds me that, like, I don't really like this. This tastes like shit. Like, what am I doing? So, I thought it was nice. And I wanted to highlight that those moments for you when you did, take your sip or you did have a full drink, that it reminded you of why this is not for you. And I think that sometimes, in our journeys of sobriety, and, of course it's different for everyone. There could be a situation, some people can't have a sip of alcohol or can't, I don't want to say, using drugs, because, if you, recreational decide that you want to, I don't know. That's a really hot topic. So I'm just going to use alcohol.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So, you have a sip, and then you can have one drink and you're fine because you're at a stage. And then some people just know that I can't have any because I don't have that, that speed bump that stops me from continuing on. And then, in your example, you tried it and you're like, yep, nope, I still don't like it. So I think I love that you shared that, just because I think that it is important that it's different for everyone.
Yes. And that's one thing that I like. If I can emphasize anything to anybody on a journey, whether you're in recovery already or not, it is to not project your journey onto other people, because everybody's process is so different. Because I have used marijuana in my process of staying sober from alcohol. I have gone off and on with it, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not completely sober. And I also don't discredit 1,350 days of non-alcohol use with a sip or a drink, I feel like maybe it'd be one thing for me personally if I would have gotten drunk and intoxicated and blacked out, and had I really gone back down that slippery slope.
Right.
But again, it's different for everybody. It's our own unique thing. And so if you are a all or nothing person, like I am most of the time, I cold turkey quit. There was no there was no weaning me off of alcohol. It was either going to be stop it now, or we're just going to continue to quote unquote moderate.
Right.
So, but there's people out in the world who can moderate. There's people who take a break for 10 years and then start drinking again. So it's one of those, my only advice is like, never put a period at the end of I don't drink, because it could be I don't drink, comma, right now. It just.
Right. Yeah. Because I kind of think of it like the way I like to think of it, and I'm not well educated in, the technical terms of, sobriety. And again, this is one of the reasons why I started this project, was so that I could learn as myself, to just be a better person and, to not be, that stumbling block for somebody else. But, it was interesting to me. And that was one of the questions that I asked Sarah was, some people, I like to think of it as like dieting almost. Like, okay, so you overate, you were overweight, you didn't like the way that your life was, so you decided to diet, cut back on the sweets. But every now and then you want to have a slice of cake. And so, and some people, I'm assuming, can get to that point in their sobriety journey where it was a really bad out of control situation. It was an unhealthy situation, but then they got it under control. And then if they want to have a glass of champagne in celebration of something, they can do that without it, spiraling out of control. And so, and then it too, like, you don't know what that person wants. Like, does that, everybody's want is different. Like, do you want to not ever drink again? Like, that's cool. Or do you want to get to a place where it's just under control? That's cool. Like, I think that's.
And I think the number one thing that anybody can do when it comes to reevaluating their relationship with alcohol is just ask yourself, why am I drinking this? Am I drinking this because everyone else around me is drinking? Am I drinking this because it's a societal norm to have champagne with a celebration? Am I drinking this because every time I turn on the TV and someone's celebrating or grieving or going through something traumatic, they've got a highball of whiskey in their hand, like it's so societally accepted to turn to alcohol for comfort, for numbing of any sort, right? And that's, look, I get it. I've definitely been there, done that.
Yeah.
So no judgment at all. But what I've been able to see through my sobriety is I've been able to take a step back and kind of pull myself out of the equation and look at it from a bird's eye view and see why I was turning to the alcohol, why I was numbing the way that I was numbing, why I felt the need to have a glass of champagne at a wedding or at a engagement party or something like that. Even in my sobriety, I've noticed through celebrations, I'll have a champagne or a flute glass with non-alcoholic, like groovy champagne or something in it, non-alcoholic. But that's still playing into that programming that you have to have some bubbly to celebrate. Why can't I just have a matcha latte whenever I want to celebrate?
Right.
And I'm getting to the point now where that's what I want to talk about is like, if you don't want champagne to celebrate, don't have champagne. Get yourself a hottie toddy or which I mean, that still has alcohol in it, but get yourself a hot tea or a matcha latte or whatever the drink is that just fills you with so much joy. Right.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I totally recommend is just start asking yourself, like, why am I drinking? What do I drink for? And then look into like the emotional intelligence aspect of it. Start questioning your emotional motives. Start questioning or pay attention when you are having a drink. Okay, what am I feeling right now? Am I in a place of irritation? Am I upset because I had a long day at work? All these different things kind of play into your mood. Your thoughts definitely play into that. And that sometimes pushes you to think, oh, yeah, it's okay. Let's just go ahead and have a drink tonight. And sometimes that one drink, that one glass of wine turns into the whole bottle. And it's easy with a bottle of wine.
Oh, yeah. I've done that more times than I would like to admit. And it is a bad day. The next, like, full 24 hours, sometimes leaking into the 48-hour mark. It's a bad day. A lot of times with addiction, I have, again, learning through this project that a lot of addiction is like rooted in something. And so I wanted to kind of like get in a little bit more to what you were saying of like finding out the reasonings behind your, the desire to drink, the desire to get drunk, the desire to numb. Do you think that, like, how did you get through that? Because I know you talked about a lot of like emotional struggles that you had, internal struggles that you had, and you feel like that manifested with the alcohol of trying to kind of like blanket that. So how, when you started in, you're like, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm going to be sober. How did you manage that? Because I'm sure when you don't have that thing that's kind of masking those problems anymore, it probably feels magnified by like 1,000. So how, like, what's your advice on that? Tell us how you managed with that.
First of all, I'm going to say one quote, and this is my favorite quote, and I apply it to everything in life, and it applies here. You're going to wonder how to do it until you wonder how you did it. And that was from my mentor's mentor. I heard her say
Yeah.
that, and I was like, girl, like, if that's not put into a book or something. Her name is Melanie Ann Layer, so I quote her. That way I don't take credit for that.
Yeah, she needs to, like, trademark that.
But I was like, oh my God, that's so right. And so looking back, when I first started, I had no idea how I was going to get through it. And looking back, I don't even know how I did, except
Yeah.
for, excuse me, an amazing support system. Like, I told my husband I was ready to quit drinking, and within a week he said, I'll quit with you.
Yeah.
Not everyone gets that, right? So
Right.
off the bat, I had him in my corner, like, come on, let's do this. We're going to do it together. So that was great. I had my mom in my corner, of course, my dad as well, both cheering me on, saying, like, look, if you need anything, we got you. And in the first 6 months of it was, I felt like I was aimlessly lost in a store. Like someone had just dropped me in the middle and was like, find your way out. So I was
Yeah.
trying AA meetings. I was going to therapy once a week. I was reading every sobriety book I could get my hands on, listening to podcasts. Like, I was just doing all the things that I thought, that I was watching everybody else do, right? I joined Facebook groups for sobriety and just all this different stuff. And I was probably about 6 months in that I stumbled upon an energy coach on Instagram. And it didn't click to me that I had been doing so much work on the physical realm. I had physically broken the habit of drinking. I was not going to the bar anymore. Like, I had done so much work on that, but I hadn't done any inner work, nothing on my spiritual or my emotional or my mental. And I discovered Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I will sing his praises for the rest of my life, because I vividly remember the moment I was listening to the podcast interview of his in my car, and it like clicked. The light bulb switched on. And I listened to this specific podcast interview every day that I would drive to and home from work, which was 4 to 5 days a week. And I would listen to it on repeat. I mean, I probably did it for like 6 months. I can't even tell you how often I listened to it. And in the midst of repeatedly listening to it, my consciousness was in a sense up leveling. And so I would get something new out of it every time I heard it. And one day I don't even remember what he said, but he said something about the power of the body that created the body can heal the body. And I was like, wait, what?
What?
That was so for my little mind at the time, it was so mind blowing of a concept to hear. And I was like, the power that created the body can heal the body. Okay. And so then I started listening a little bit more, and I realized that I was I was the main character in my own suffering, because I wasn't facing the emotional sobriety aspect that is so vital when it comes to your recovery. You can physically quit and have that out the way, but if you don't work on the emotional reasons why you are drinking, why you were trying or using it to escape your life, you're gonna fear that you're gonna go back to it at any given moment. And I think
Yeah.
that's why when I had my drink this last go around, I'm in such a different mental and spiritual place right now that it's almost like I've leveled up to above alcohol. Not saying that I'm better than it or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I'm just on a different level than it. And it no longer does what it used to do for me. I know I look at it and I'm like, no, I'm going to go meditate. I'm going to go journal.
Yeah.
I'm going to go journal this out, because I find when I journal this out, I've got more peace inside than when I suppress it and drink. And then I feel like shit the next day because I have a hangover. So
Yeah.
on top of the hangover and the shame and the guilt, I still have an unresolved problem.
Oh my God. I love it. Like, I love it. I mean, I think it's so important that people, a lot of the like healing trauma, healing, whatever it is that you're going through, the mind has to be the first thing that's addressed. Like you said, I love how you broke that down for us and explained, you can physically quit something, but until you are mentally
Mhm.
mentally quitting, in essence, because you're, like you said, you're basically right, walking that tightrope until that foot slips, and then you're down, and then you could continue to keep falling
And
if you don't fix
it's
what's going on.
if you slip and you fall, it's almost harder to get back up after slipping and falling.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. It's almost like it's like the fear of failure becomes so strong that it's like, why even try again? Because I'm not going to
Why?
make it,
Yeah.
And let me just be the first to say, cut that thinking out of your head, right? Your mind
Yeah.
can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy. But in order for it to be your best friend, what do you have to do? You have to cultivate a relationship with it, just like you do with the people in your life. And if you don't
Yeah.
cultivate a relationship with your mental body, your emotional body, your spiritual body, whatever your beliefs are, you're never going to have that full whole body sense of well-being and fulfillment. I don't have
Yeah.
thousands of dollars in the bank and I'm not the CEO of my own company and I don't have what your societal norm is of success. But I've got an abundance of wisdom and love and joy and peace in my life. And if I were to go today, I would be so thrilled with the way my life is because of all of the healing work that I have done over the last almost 4 years. And my definition of success and peace and happiness has completely changed in the midst of that 4 years.
Uh, I'm so glad you're saying that. Oh my gosh. Just because you hear about success, and like everyone's definition of success is different,
Mhm.
but a lot of us find ourselves saying, "Okay, so like are you a six-figure, work, like do you work and make six figures? Like do you have a mansion? Like do you
Mhm.
drive a Tesla? Like what is success?" And to me, success is exactly what you said. Like how, like at the end of the day, when I lay down in bed, because I've had like this awakening that I'm still like processing.
Mhm.
I can explain that to you a little bit later after the show. And so like I had this like I call it an awakening. I don't
Yeah.
really know. But like and a friend of mine on Facebook just today posted that they were feeling in a weird place spiritually, and was just kind of reaching out for like advice and help. And my response to her was, like, and this is where I'm tying this in with success, because this is what success means to me. I just try to wake up every day and be an impactful person. How did I live honestly to my very fullest that I was able to do that day? And some
Mhm.
days it's not very much, just because there's not, a lot going on. But like,
Yeah.
so like when I lay down at night and I have those intrusive thoughts of like, what happens if I don't wake up? Because that's something that I personally struggle with. I have to remind myself, like, I need to make sure that I loved my family, and my family knows how much I love them. I've, put my energy into them. I've put my energy into the world to be impactful. And at the end of the day, like, if I did that, that is successful to me. That
Mhm.
is how I feel. That to me is worth more than any money that you can give me.
Yeah,
So I love that.
absolutely. And that's something that I encourage, everybody to think about is, to be honest with you, I think perfection is different to everybody too. I think
Yeah.
that is based upon, because what you may find perfect, I may find a complete mess.
Yeah.
Everybody is so different, and that's the beautiful thing. And I just wish that more people would start tapping into their spirit, their highest self, and pull away from that ego that feels the need to be so defensive and so on guard at all time. Our ego is so beautiful and it does a great job of protecting us and it has its role in our life for sure. But the one thing that has changed my life tremendously besides sobriety is just leading with love everywhere I go and understanding that every single person out in the world that I come into contact with at the grocery store, every person that cuts me off on the road, every person that gives me the middle finger because I accidentally cut them off on the road. Like, we're all in our own world, and we all have our own trauma, and we all have our own story. And so I've come to realize that if I just lead with a little bit of grace and a little bit of love, it gets you so far. It just, and the main thing is it gets you so far in the sense that your internal peace doesn't fluctuate, because you understand that everything outside of you is just an experience for the day, and tomorrow could be totally different, right? So just seeing it, it's just like, okay, that's their experience today. They're having a rough one. And you know what? I've had some rough experiences. And so I'm going to show them a little grace and understanding.
Yeah.
That keeps that internal guide, that internal compass, if you will, on the straight and narrow. You know, my number one goal is to stay with integrity, you know, make sure that I'm doing the way that my mentor says it, like, act as if your mentor's eyes are always on top of you, right? Like, would you like it if your parents saw you act that way, or if your husband or your mentor or whoever it is that you look up to saw you respond the way you respond? And if the answer is yes, then great, you're staying within your integrity, you know. But a lot of us have those many moments where someone cuts us off on the road and we're like, bye, you know, and you want to just go like, but we all have to remember, like, how many times have we accidentally cut someone off? How many times
I ain't not realizing it.
have we been lost in a new city? And, you know, so it's just going back to that place of understanding and compassion and remembering, like, we're all in this human experience together, and it's a crazy roller coaster, and we just got to have a little bit of compassion and understanding.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, that's such good advice. I do want to give shout outs to your husband and my husband for being incredible human beings, because that was one of the things that you, when you were telling your story, I completely connected with that. Again, not trying to like jump on my story to like, you know, in the middle of your story, but like I connected with that because when I met my husband, I was in such a dark place. I was spiraling out of control down very dark holes. And I didn't have an alcohol problem. I could say that, but like, again, it's not like I had only been drinking. So in a previous relationship, in a previous life that I lived before I met my husband, I was a completely different person. Mm-hmm. And so I'd never drank. I probably had maybe 5 drinks of alcohol in my entire life. And at that point I was like, woohoo, freedom. And so I was like, let me get drunk and let me go party and let me just see. And there was multiple times that I got blackout drunk with him, with my husband and then boyfriend. And I did things and said things that I don't remember. And and like you said, like, and the way that I feel, like, knowing that I said those things and did those things, I'm like, first of all, the fact that you just didn't give up on me. Like, you had every reason to run for the hills, screaming. Yes. And you stayed. Yes. And you stayed. And same with yours. They stayed. And I just, you know, we want to thank you.
and I'm sitting here getting teared up because I will never stop expressing my gratitude for my husband and the role that he has played in my life. But there's this article on alcohol, and it talks about the spiritual effect, in a sense, of alcohol. And whether you believe in God or, you know, higher power, universe, whatever the case is, I firmly believe that there's a spirit realm. And with alcohol, there are different spirits attached to it. And it goes through this whole thing of how when you partake in drinking, you, in a sense, allow your conscious self to say, hey, this world is too much for me right now. I'm going to hand this over to a different spirit, a different entity. Thus, always people having a different version of themselves come out whenever they drink. And I always thought that was...
You just gave me cold chills. Oh my gosh.
I'll send you the link of the article. Yeah. It's mind-blowing. And they talk about its origin, root word, and the definition of it, and like why all of this is the way it is. But But it made so much sense when I read it because it was like a different person in me came out. It was like the ugliest, most terrible side of me came out. But in the midst of all of that, the most beautiful thing was my husband was still right there. My, like you said, then boyfriend, now husband, like
Yeah.
and I look at him so often and I tell him thank you because he showed up when I least expected it, but I most needed it.
Same.
And I didn't realize it then, like I realize it now. And I also don't know how I didn't just like pass this beautiful chance up because of how involved I was with alcohol and how lost I was. Because I hope with everything inside of me that everybody in the world gets to experience this kind of relationship, not just because of the love, but because I literally got to marry my best friend. And we talk every day. He focuses on himself and on me and on us and our future, right? It's not just about him. He doesn't do things just to please me. There is this mutual, I'm going to put me first and then we'll come together once we've put each other first. And
Yeah.
it's, I sit here and I'm in awe of my own relationship because being the
Yeah.
little searcher of love in all of the wrong places for so long, was kissing so many
Yes.
toes, and I finally found my
Yeah.
Prince Charming, if you will.
Oh,
And I just hope that everybody gets to experience their own version of that, because to know that I can go up to my husband and the ugliest, most screaming, outrageously cussing version of myself, and he will still look at me and say, I love you. That's safety. That makes me want to just crawl, like just fall into his arms and just say,
yeah.
thank you
Oh,
for cultivating this safe space for me. And I just hope I can do the same for him.
yeah. Oh my, this is so freaking bizarre. I feel like is this real life? Like, cause your husband sounds exactly like mine. And we didn't think that those kind of people existed. But
Mm-hmm.
like that's like one of the things that he would say to me, and I think it's important to say, it's something that everyone should probably hear, because I was so dependent. I connected with you on the beauty pageant
Mm-hmm.
thing. I did beauty pageants and I didn't even look at it the way that you look at it until I had this conversation with you today, right now. Like I never viewed it it never like made that sense. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But, I was so dependent on, like you said, love, affection, attention, looking in all of the wrong places. And, when I first started hanging out with my husband, I would, when we got to that point where we were in a relationship, because it started out as a friendship, a very good friendship. And I think, that's what really is the core of our relationship, and why
Mm-hmm.
it is the way that it is because of that. But when we started dating each other and, I really started to develop an attachment to him, I would tell him all the time, I need you. Like, I need you. And he's like, no, like, you don't need to need me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to be able to be who you are. And then I'm just with you. Like, we're in this together. But like, you need to like need yourself
Yes.
first and like depend on yourself and have that, like, because I honestly felt like, what would I do if he ever left, or like if
Mm-hmm.
something happened to him? Like, I don't know how I would survive, because I attached myself to him when I was spiraling, because I still honestly say today that if it wasn't for him, I don't know that I would be here. I
Yeah.
honestly don't. And so I felt like I needed him to
Mm-hmm.
survive, to be alive, to function. And he would say all the time, you don't need me. Like, don't need me. We got to get yourself. And so like, I just think that connection, like with you and your husband, I'm like, oh, it's
Well,
beautiful.
and I will say I was very much like my trauma style. My trauma is, or what is it? Your trauma style is attachment. Like in the very
Yeah.
beginning, I one, because of never having things staying in my life for so long, and then also constantly moving, like there was never stability, right? So the moment I got something good, I suffocated it because I just never wanted to let it go. yet
Right.
not realizing that I was suffocating it to the point it wanted to leave me, right? And so in the beginning, with my husband, again, God bless his soul for dealing with all of my
Yeah.
wild insecurities and,
Yeah.
all of this kind of stuff. But I remember having a week where it shifted for me. I had the realization that if, God forbid, for some reason he left or I left or we didn't work out, I had, for the first time in my life, I had this feeling of, I'll be okay. It'll suck. I'll be
Yeah.
emotionally upset. I'm definitely going to grieve. All of these natural things are going to happen. But at the end of the day, I'll be okay. Because for the first time in my life, I had full, solid confidence within myself, knowing I will pick myself back up from this emotional mess. I got myself out of drinking. I can recover from a heartbreak. That's for damn
Yeah.
sure. And
Yeah.
having that realization helped me detach from my husband. And now it's like we're two very much independent souls that coexist together. And sometimes we're more independent on days and sometimes we're attached at the hip. It just depends on
Yeah.
the day. But the beautiful thing is, we don't need each other, but we desire each other. We crave each other. We want to be
Yeah.
next to each other. And I think that is the most beautiful way, the most healthy way to be in a relationship as well, is having that full, finally, all these cliches now that I'm sober always make me laugh, but it's so true when they say you've got to love yourself first before you can fully love another, right? You can only
Yeah.
love others as much as you love yourself. And you may
Yeah.
think that you're loving others more than you love yourself, but it's this, most of the time, conditional, twisted way of the way that you're loving them. And
Yeah.
so getting to that place of fully detaching and understanding that there's going to be important people that come and go in my life all the time, and that they're not mine to hold. They're not mine to keep. They're their own. And I get to enjoy the time that they're in my life. And if that time's for 5 minutes or 5 years, I got to make the most of it.
Ah. Oh my gosh, such amazing. Oh gosh, I feel like I could talk to you forever. Oh my gosh. I do have a couple questions that I
Yeah.
want to ask you that I like to ask all of my guests. So one of my favorite questions is, what's the best piece of advice that you would give a younger version of yourself who is in the thick of struggle if you had a few moments with them?
Mm, wow. Without tearing up. Holy crap, that one just,
Oh, I
that
know.
one kept
Don't.
me.
We're gonna both. Yeah, I always have tissues just in case, but
If I could have 5 seconds with the younger version of myself, I would tell her, I love you so much. Do not give up. And anytime you question anything, look in the mirror, because there's your answer.
that's beautiful.
But
I love it.
the number one thing that I think we should all get in the habit of is looking in the mirror and saying to ourselves, I love you, Patsy. I love you,
Yeah.
Jessica. We tell everyone else in the world we love them, but we never say it to ourselves.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like those affirmations. And I've not done a lot of reading on it, but my midwife used it on me while I was in labor. And I thought it was like, I am all for, like, again, this was kind of like, I don't know. I still am in a weird place with things like that.
Hmm.
But I do believe in like thinking positive. I struggle with it sometimes. So when she was like, you can do this, you are strong. And like me saying that, I'm like, I feel so weird, like saying that. So, so like getting in the mirror and saying, I love you, Jessica, like it feels weird, but I'm definitely going to give it a shot.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do with affirmations is, yes, there's all these beautiful ones of like, I'm going to be rich and I'm going to be a
Yeah.
millionaire. Like, all of these like big dream, big goal affirmations. And by all means, utilize all the affirmations that feel good to you. But one thing that I love to focus on is the brain looks for evidence. And so if you're saying an affirmation that's too far fetched for your now moment, your brain is going to say, no, no, you can't. No, you won't. That's not true. And so on a subconscious level, you're pretty much just saying words to say them because you're not believing what you're saying.
Really believing it.
And so I love to use affirmations that have potential in them, right? So like I am growing every day to gain financial abundance versus I'm going to be a millionaire. Because your brain says, you're not going to be a millionaire. What?
Yeah.
But in all reality, if you can create $1, you can create 100, you can create 1,000,000.
Yeah.
But it's utilizing those statements that have potential in them to where your brain doesn't say, that's not true. No, you can't do that. Because your brain is going to say, oh, yeah, you are growing every day, so you can gain more financial abundance. That's a statement.
And do you suggest like physically saying these out loud, or can you read them? Or because I've heard that like actually like saying it makes a difference too.
I suggest for anybody to do it whatever way works for them. But my favorite, I am a person of all the ways. I like to write it. I like to read it. And then I like to look at myself in the mirror and do mirror work with certain affirmations. And so like right now, like I'm really focusing around like the divine feminine and my body and truly loving my body for all of what she is and all of what she maybe quote unquote lacks, right? Because I'm not the most curvy person in the world. And so there's some healing around feeling feminine enough, even though I'm super skinny and bony the way that I view it. So it's, it's taking those affirmations and, I love to listen to a recording of myself because my voice, my brain recognizes my own voice and it's saying, you are, it's me talking to me saying, you are beautiful. You are strong. Your body is strong, and then I go through all the things of why my body's strong. So I'm a big believer in affirmations if you're using them in a way that works with the subconscious mind and that full belief system.
I'm going to give it a shot. My husband, he believes in those things too. And he's like, that whole like positive mental attitude, but really truly embracing the positive because, just depending on your traumas and the things that you've been through, like it can be difficult sometimes to like not automatically go to that negative thing. And with me and my traumas, like, we were talking about it this morning, like, so I was, troubleshooting some things with him on the phone. And he's like, why are you always going to the negative? Like, look at this. Like, the positive is this. Like, and that's really, it takes some work. It really does. It's definitely not, I think it's safe to say not an overnight thing, but, start and then just go from there.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I think it's society, whether it's a human nature thing or we've been programmed and societally conditioned this way, but we just are quick to look at the negative. You can do a million good things in your life and you make one mistake and you're going to be remembered for your mistake, right? That's, or at least that's been the story, right?
That's what we feel like, yeah.
And so yeah, I totally get it, but I think for me, it's the mirror work. It's the eye contact. And if you start to feel uncomfortable or resistant, stick with it because that means like what you resist persists. And so if you keep resisting it, it's just like when you try something new, you're going to suck.
Yeah.
It's new.
Right.
You're not going to be the best. It's going to feel weird. You're going to get frustrated, but it's a journey. It's a process and it's a really, really beautiful one. If you just lean into the process and just don't fight it, which again, easier said than done. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. Just be gentle with yourself, everybody.
Definitely.
That's all we're saying.
Yes, but try.
Yeah, but give it a shot. Oh my gosh, yep. My last question to you is, we like to talk about stepping into our own power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. How would you describe, or what do you think the type of power that you try to step into every day?
I try to step into a very bold, loving power in the sense that I want to speak value. I want to own my truth, disregard the reaction of any other person. And I want to feel confident in the value that I'm giving to the world and in the change that I'm bringing to the world.
Such good. Oh my gosh. I have enjoyed talking to you so much today. I want to thank you on behalf of everyone who heard your incredible story of transformation, and myself for being so open to sharing with us. I'm almost speechless. Like it's been great talking to you.
Well, thank you again so much for having me on. Like, yes, it's always a beautiful experience to share my story, and it I get choked up. It doesn't matter how often I talk about it, I get choked up because it's been such a wild, beautiful ride. And the only thing that I wish that my story does, it gives hope to other people that are struggling right now to know you're so much more powerful than you give yourself credit for, and don't give up. Just keep trying.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I want to thank my guests again for sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. I'm going to link their social medias below so that you can give them a follow. And of course, if you guys felt personally connected to the story and you would like to support the podcast by purchasing one of the limited edition prints that goes along with it, you can do so at my new website. It is iampower.club. And of course, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at iampowerclub. And lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Am Power. We will see you then.